What if the reason you're struggling financially has nothing to do with your job, your qualifications, or even your market timing? What if it has everything to do with something much simpler, something almost invisible, something sitting quietly, almost innocently, in the heart of your home, your kitchen? We often think of fortune as something you chase outside of yourself, a new opportunity, a promotion, a better investment. But in feng shui, the ancient art of aligning your environment with your destiny, there's a different truth. Fortune doesn't come from chasing. It comes from what you allow to gather and what you unknowingly allow to scatter. And nowhere is this more true, more silently powerful than in your kitchen. The kitchen is not just a room. It's not just where meals are made. It's where your life force is stored, simmered, and multiplied. It's a living vault of energy, a daily engine that either fortifies your financial river or quietly drains it drop by drop without you even noticing. Imagine this. Every day, you cook meals for your family. You nourish, you provide. You show up, you pour your heart into the simple rituals of living. And yet, behind the scenes, something as small as the way your bowls are stored, the clash between your appliances, or the quiet clutter you ignore above your cabinets, could be dissolving the very prosperity you are trying to build. You work harder, but save less. You earn more, but keep feeling depleted. You plan more carefully, but the opportunities feel thinner, the doors heavier, the progress slower. Maybe, just maybe, it's not your effort that's broken. Maybe it's the energy field around you that needs mending. In today's video, we're going to explore something both ancient and urgent. How the subtle details of your kitchen, the things you don't even think about, could be shaping your financial outcomes more than you ever realized. This isn't about superstition. This isn't about fear. This is about understanding the simple laws of energetic flow, the same way you would respect the laws of gravity or the laws of growth in a garden. Because what you live around, you live into. And the space that holds your meals holds your fortunes. Together, we're going to uncover 7 powerful kitchen mistakes that quietly erode wealth energy. And more importantly, how simple, thoughtful changes can shift the entire trajectory of your financial energy without needing massive renovations, expensive tools, or overwhelming rituals. Just awareness, just intention, just wisdom. The kind that has been passed down, not shouted, but whispered for centuries. And before we dive into this journey together, if these kinds of grounded, practical teachings resonate with you, if you believe that true change starts from within, and that the home is not just a shelter, but a sacred field for your future, I invite you to support this channel. Please take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. We're so close to reaching 1,000 followers, and every like, every share, every subscription helps bring timeless, life-anchoring wisdom to more homes, more families, and more lives that are ready to receive it. You and I both know change doesn't happen through force. It happens through alignment, through subtle shifts, through choosing, moment by moment, to live more attentively, more respectfully, more purposefully. Your kitchen already holds the seeds of your future. The only question is, are you nurturing them or unknowingly draining them? Stay with me, because in the next few moments, you may see your home and your fortune with entirely new eyes. Let's begin. Principle 1, uprightness matters. The silent language of open bowls. In the architecture of feng shui, there are grand structures and loud symbols, but often it is the quiet, almost invisible gestures that decide the fate of a household's energy. One of the most deceptively simple but profoundly impactful of these gestures lies in the way we store something as ordinary, as everyday, as bowls. A bowl in its very shape is a statement of openness. It is a vessel designed to receive food, water, offerings, and in the energetic language of feng shui, it symbolizes the capacity to hold blessings, fortune, nourishment, and opportunity. When bowls are stored upside down, however, the symbolism is inverted. Instead of receptivity, the posture becomes one of closure, refusal, denial. It sends a silent message to the chi flowing through your home. We are full. We have no space for more. We reject what wishes to come. And over time, that silent message is heard not just by your home, but by your life itself. When you walk into a kitchen where every bowl is stacked upside down, the energetic field feels subtly different. It may not be obvious at first. You may not consciously think, rejection lives here. But the body, more honest than the mind, feels it. It may feel slightly less welcoming, slightly less abundant, slightly more like a place of functionality rather than celebration. The difference between an upright bowl and an upside-down bowl is the difference between an open hand and a closed fist. And life responds accordingly. Feng Shui teaches that qi is like a polite guest. It flows where it feels welcomed. It stays where it is honored. And it quietly recedes where it senses dismissal. Bowls, as humble as they seem, participate in this ongoing conversation between form and fortune. And when we choose to store them upright, we are not merely making an aesthetic decision. We are participating in an ancient, living language. A language that says, I am ready to receive. I honor the blessings that are seeking me. The practical adjustment is simple, yet powerful. Store your bowls upright, keep them clean. Resist the temptation to let dust or stains accumulate in them. For dust represents stagnation and stains symbolize overlooked blessings. Once a week, or even once a month, take a moment to rearrange your bowls with care. Touch them with intention. As you lift each one, silently express gratitude, not just for the meals they have held, but for the meals yet to come, for the prosperity they symbolize, for the unseen abundance they are already inviting. This practice does not require elaborate rituals. It does not require special tools. It simply asks for attention. And in Feng Shui, attention is the purest form of energy you can offer. Because what you notice, you nourish. What you cherish, you channel. I once worked with a family who had been struggling for months. Their family business, once steady, had entered a cycle of unpredictability. Clients canceling last minute, promising deals evaporating without explanation, expenses rising faster than revenue. When I visited their home, I noticed something small but telling. In their kitchen, every bowl was stacked face down, dusty, and neglected. No one had thought twice about it. It was, after all, just how they had always done it. But when I explained the significance, that the bowls were broadcasting a message of closeness, of rejection of fortune, they listened. They took a Sunday afternoon, cleaned every bowl carefully, placed them upright, and while arranging them, each family member spoke a personal wish aloud. Nothing extravagant, just simple hopes for health, for stability, for continued opportunity. Within 2 months, they reported 3 surprising business developments. An old client returned with a new, larger contract. A local magazine featured their shop in a positive article without solicitation. And an unexpected collaboration offered them a new income stream. None of these events were caused solely by the bowls, of course, but in the language of Feng Shui, the bowls created a signal. They told the energetic field around them, we are open, we are ready, we honor what wishes to come, and the field responded. In your own home, this shift can be just as powerful. It may not always result in sudden financial windfalls. Feng Shui is not a vending machine for miracles. But it will always result in an internal realignment, a subtle but profound shift from scarcity to receptivity, from hardness to softness, from closure to openness. There is a quiet dignity in an upright bowl. It asks for nothing, it demands nothing, it simply stands ready. It trusts the natural flow of nourishment. It honors the rhythm of give and receive. And when you align your small actions with these larger rhythms, you begin to experience something extraordinary. Fortune no longer feels like a chase. It feels like a river you have stepped into. A river that was always there, waiting, hoping you would finally open your hands and say, I am ready. So tonight, after you finish watching this video, before you turn off the lights, walk into your kitchen. Open the cabinets, look at your bowls, see them not as dishes, but as silent conversations between you and the energy of life itself. If they are upside down, lift them gently. Turn them over, place them upright, clean them if needed, thank them, bless them. You may find in doing so that you are not just arranging ceramics, you are arranging your readiness. You are speaking to the invisible currents that weave fortune into form, and they are always listening, always waiting for the one who dares to open. Principle 2, invisible battles. Cold versus heat in your appliances. Among the many unseen conversations happening inside a home, few are as overlooked yet as quietly influential as the energetic dialogue between appliances, specifically the silent war between cold and heat. In feng shui, every object, every material, every orientation, even every temperature carries a signature of qi, a living imprint of either stillness or stimulation. The refrigerator, humming its constant low song in the background of our kitchens, is an emblem of preservation. It represents the energy of yin, of stillness, of containment. It asks for rest. It holds, stores, quiets. It is the gentle lake in the energetic landscape of a home. In contrast, the microwave, compact and unassuming, pulses with yang force. It radiates quick fire. It heats, agitates, activates. It embodies the energy of rapid transformation, of stirring what was dormant into urgency. It is a lightning bolt in the energetic landscape of a home. Now imagine these two forces, yin and yang, lake and lightning, placed directly on top of each other without mediation. In feng shui terms, this is an invisible battle, an energetic friction that does not scream, but hums, vibrates, unsettles. Over time, the clash between the refrigerator's cold stillness and the microwave's sudden heat creates a localized field of instability, subtly disturbing the broader qi of the kitchen and, by extension, the household's wealth and harmony. At first glance, this arrangement seems practical, space-saving, logical. Why not stack appliances when kitchen countertops are limited? But what logic economizes in convenience, it often sacrifices in harmony. In energetic terms, when water, refrigerator, and fire, microwave, are forced into direct contact without balance, the household may experience seemingly unrelated but connected disruptions. Minor accidents, unexpected bills, strained communication, emotional short-circuiting, financial gains followed immediately by losses. It is not superstition, it is the inevitable result of opposing forces fighting for dominance in a field meant for nourishment and preservation. The solution, however, is elegant in its simplicity. Rather than dismantling your kitchen or investing in expensive renovations, you can introduce a mediator, an element that harmonizes water and fire. In the 5 elements theory that underpins classical feng shui, wood is the element that bridges water and fire. Water feeds wood. Wood in turn nourishes fire. It is the natural conduit between cold stillness and active transformation. Introducing the wood element between your refrigerator and microwave restores harmony to the flow, dissolving the conflict into a smooth, nourishing sequence. Practically, this can be achieved by placing a thin but meaningful layer of wood between the two appliances. A small bamboo mat, a slab of treated wood, or even a green cloth, green being the color resonance of wood in feng shui, serves beautifully. If aesthetics allow, you might even position a small wooden tray that holds light objects, nothing heavy or burdening, for the goal is not to weigh down but to weave connection. In doing so, you do not merely decorate your kitchen, you heal an invisible rift. You invite reconciliation between forces that, left unchecked, would continue to fray your environment's unseen threads. Placement matters. Ensure that the wood layer is genuinely between the two, not symbolic off to the side. It must function as a bridge, not an ornament. The act of placement itself should be mindful, an offering, a conversation. As you set the bamboo tray or the green cloth, you might internally affirm, I harmonize stillness and transformation. I honor both rest and movement. The energetic field listens to such affirmations, not through the ears of language, but through the hands of form. For those who seek an even subtler calibration, incorporating a small potted plant, especially one with soft, upward growth, like a peace lily or lucky bamboo, near the microwave refrigerator area further enhances the wood field, reinforcing the symbolism with living qi. But always the principle remains: simplicity over clutter, intention over excess. Feng Shui is not about how much you place, but how purely you place. It's also essential to recognize that even if you cannot physically separate the refrigerator and microwave due to space limitations, the energetic separation through the wood element is enough to shift the dialogue from conflict to collaboration. You are not fighting physics, you are reweaving the narrative written into the spatial arrangement. And in Feng Shui, narratives become realities. Over time, the shifts will likely feel subtle at first. Smoother conversations at dinner, less emotional heat around financial discussions, a more even emotional keel across the week. These are not coincidences. They are the small, cumulative benefits of reestablishing energetic harmony where friction once lived. The microwave does not have to stop heating. The refrigerator does not have to stop cooling. But now, instead of crashing into each other, their energies flow through the intermediary of wood, creating a continuous, nourishing cycle that blesses the home instead of fragmenting it. So the next time you glance across your kitchen, see not just appliances, but energies. Not just convenience, but conversation. Not just function, but fortune. Every arrangement is a prayer, whether spoken aloud or whispered silently by space itself. Arrange wisely, arrange kindly, arrange as if your future depends on it, because in many ways it quietly and visibly, profoundly does. Principle 3, wood utensils and emotional absorption. Among the many quiet materials that populate our homes, wood holds a unique place in Feng Shui. Unlike metal, stone, or plastic, wood is alive, or at least it remembers life. Even when shaped into utensils, bowls, or furniture, wood carries a lingering trace of its former vitality, its ability to absorb, to breathe, to interact with its environment on a subtle, invisible level. This is not just poetic imagination. It is an energetic reality recognized in traditional Feng Shui and Bazi elemental theory. Wood utensils, particularly those left untreated or poorly maintained, do not simply absorb the moisture of soups or sauces. They absorb emotional residues. They capture the tensions, the frustrations, the daily minor frictions that flow through a household. Over time, if left uncleansed or neglected, they become silent anchors for emotional heaviness, especially for those individuals whose elemental constitution is heavily wood-based. In Bazi 4 pillars analysis, wood element people are naturally growth-driven, idealistic, striving toward light like a tree reaching for the sun. But the shadow side of wood is stagnation. Just as a tree choked by mildew or poor soil can rot rather than thrive, a person ruled by the wood element can become weighed down by unseen burdens, feeling stuck, heavy, emotionally sluggish, or quietly resentful without an obvious external cause. In the kitchen, where energy should nourish and uplift, using cracked, splintered, or exhausted wooden tools becomes more than a minor aesthetic issue. It becomes an energetic drag, a slow accumulation of fatigue that feeds back into the meals prepared, the conversations held, and ultimately the emotional tone of the entire household. Think of it this way: every time you stir a pot with a wooden spoon, you are not only mixing ingredients, you are mixing energies. Fresh tools, cared for and respected, circulate vitality. Neglected tools, holding old residues, circulate a whisper of tiredness that settles deeper over time than most people ever realize. The practical Feng Shui advice here is simple but powerful. Treat your wood with respect. Choose wooden utensils that are naturally dried and minimally chemically treated. Opt for tight-grained woods like beech, olive, or maple, which are less porous and more resilient energetically. Clean them gently but thoroughly, avoiding harsh detergents that strip the living memory from the material, and allow them to dry fully before storing. Even better, periodically, perhaps once a season, take the time to oil your wooden utensils with natural oils, like food-grade mineral oil or walnut oil, infusing them with a layer of care, protection, and renewal. This act is more than maintenance. It is energetic gratitude in motion. When a wooden spoon splinters, cracks, or becomes deeply stained, it should not be seen merely as worn-out equipment. It should be seen as a vessel that has given its strength and needs retirement. Do not cling to it out of thrift or nostalgia. Just as you would not drink from a cracked cup or sleep on a broken bed, Do not prepare meals with tools that no longer honor the energy of nourishment. Releasing such objects respectfully is part of maintaining the energetic hygiene of your home. I once worked with a young chef who, despite a promising start to her career, found herself feeling increasingly uninspired, fatigued, and irritable in her own kitchen. She blamed long hours, high pressure, endless competition. But when we examined her home environment, we noticed a small but telling pattern. Her most used utensils, spoons, spatulas, cutting boards, were all heavily worn wooden tools she had inherited or bought secondhand, each one deeply etched with the labor of other kitchens, other stories, other struggles. Some were cracked, others warped, many darkened with age and neglect. At first, she resisted the idea that something so minor could be contributing to her emotional heaviness. But eventually, she agreed to replace them. She chose new wooden tools mindfully, selected a few she truly loved, and committed to caring for them differently, with attention, with gratitude, with periodic renewal. Within a month, she reported a subtle but profound shift. Her kitchen felt lighter, her creativity returned. Her meals, she said, felt alive again. It wasn't magic, it was resonance. It was alignment. It was honoring the living relationship between material and spirit. And so in your own kitchen, look again at your wooden utensils. See them not as mere tools, but as living participants in the field of energy you inhabit daily. Ask yourself, are they carrying freshness or fatigue? Are they witnesses to vitality or custodians of exhaustion? And if you find that they have crossed that invisible threshold from service to burden, release them without guilt. Thank them and let them go. Choose new companions for your meals. Infuse them with care. And in doing so, invite into your home and into your body the living, breathing energy of renewal. Because in feng shui, what you touch touches you back. What you use uses you back. And when you nourish the small, silent threads of life around you, those threads, woven together, quietly, faithfully, begin to nourish you. Principle 4, let go of dead energy. Old oils and expired items. Among the subtle practices of cultivating fortune and vitality within the home, there are few acts more deceptively powerful than the willingness to release what is no longer alive. In feng shui, the quality of qi that surrounds us is not static. It breathes, it pulses, it responds to what we keep close. And when the objects around us are stale, expired, or dead, they drag the living energy of the home into a quiet undertow of stagnation. Nowhere is this dynamic more critical and more often overlooked than in the kitchen, particularly when it comes to cooking oils, condiments, and pantry items that have passed their prime. We tend to think of expiration dates as mere suggestions, gentle reminders printed for regulatory reasons. But in energetic terms, they are markers of vitality's natural curve: birth, peak, and decline. An oil, once rich and golden, begins to oxidize. A jar of spices, once fragrant and sharp, grows dull and inert. A sauce, once vibrant, quietly ferments into something untrustworthy. When we ignore these life cycles and continue to stock our shelves with expired or forgotten items, we are not simply being careless. We are unconsciously embedding dead qi into the heart of our homes, into the very place where our meals, the material carriers of our life force, are prepared. In feng shui, the kitchen is understood as the primary reservoir of nourishment qi. It is where we transform raw ingredients into sustenance, where we symbolically and physically create life from matter. If the energy that presides over this sacred work is stale or decayed, the meals, the moods, and the fortunes that emerge from it bear the hidden fingerprints of that decay. It may manifest as a creeping sense of dissatisfaction, minor but chronic health issues, unexpected financial leaks, or emotional heaviness that has no clear origin. The correction is simple, yet it requires a spirit of reverence, not just utility. Once every month, set aside a short span of time to audit your kitchen essentials. Open every cabinet. Look at every bottle of oil, every jar of spice, every bag of flour or grain. Check dates not as a bureaucratic exercise, but as an act of energetic respect. Smell them, feel them. If their life force is gone, if their vitality is spent, Thank them, and then let them go. There is no virtue in hoarding what cannot nourish. There is no abundance in clinging to what has already completed its cycle. This act of clearing is not merely subtraction, it is invocation. When you release the dead, you create a vacuum that life naturally rushes to fill. New opportunities, new vitality, new ideas find it easier to root themselves in a space that is not already crowded with what is past. In classical feng shui, this principle is echoed again and again. The unburdened field grows the strongest crops. The uncluttered path invites the freshest winds. I remember working with a woman whose family kitchen had become a quiet shrine to nostalgia. Rows of oils, vinegars, spices, some dating back 5, even 10 years, lined her shelves. They told stories of meals made, feasts shared, guests once welcomed. But they also whispered of years gone by, opportunities missed, vitality dulled. She could not bring herself to throw them away. It felt like a betrayal of memory. Yet her life, much like her kitchen, had become stuck in a subtle limbo, full of potential but lacking movement. After much reflection, she agreed to a gentle ceremony of release. We thanked each item, honored its role, and let it go. Within months, the shifts were visible. New invitations to teach, unexpected social engagements, a blossoming sense of purpose she had not felt in years. Clearing the pantry cleared the psychic air. In your own home, the invitation is simple. Look honestly. Look with the eyes of a gardener who knows that pruning is not destruction. It is devotion. Ask yourself, what am I feeding my life with? Is it fresh? Is it aligned with the future I wish to welcome? And if not, can I honor its place in my story while still choosing to release it? There is profound dignity in saying, this served me once, it no longer does. I release it with gratitude. This is the energetic posture of true abundance, not hoarding what was, but preparing space for what wishes to come. And when the kitchen becomes a space of only living energies, clean oils, fresh grains, vibrant spices, the meals it produces carry not just calories, but vitality. The conversations it hosts carry not just noise, but connection. And the fortunes it cultivates become not just hopes, but harvests. In the end, the kitchen is not about storage. It is about circulation, not about clinging, about flowing. Letting go of dead energy in your kitchen is not a chore. It is an offering to the future. It is a message written into the walls and the shelves that says, this home honors life. This home honors growth. This home is ready. Principle 5, open the sky. Clearing cabinet tops. In the subtle art of feng shui, there is an understanding that energy is not only about what surrounds you horizontally, but also about what rises and falls above you. The unseen spaces, the air above your head, the openness of the ceiling, the clarity of cabinet tops, play a quiet but powerful role in the way fortune either descends gently into your life or is blocked, pressed down, suffocated before it even has the chance to bless you. In the kitchen, this truth is magnified. The kitchen is the hearth of nourishment, the vault of vitality, the generator of daily chi that feeds not only the body, but also the opportunities, relationships, and aspirations that stretch outward from the home into the wider world. Above the kitchen cabinets, the zone often forgotten or casually used for storage, lies what classical feng shui calls the symbolic heavenly influence, the energetic sky that either nourishes the home's wealth or quietly suppresses it. When the tops of cabinets are crammed with old moss, dusty jars, forgotten appliances, or neglected decorations, the energy becomes heavy, congested. Symbolically, it is as if the sky itself presses down on the household's fortune, dimming inspiration, compressing vitality, and weighing down not only financial luck, but also the family's collective spirit. People living under low skies often report feeling inexplicably burdened, working harder but seeing fewer results, feeling motivated yet strangely directionless, craving expansion but feeling trapped. It is not that their ambitions are wrong. It is that the environment has already decided, silently and invisibly, that there is no space for blessings to descend. The remedy is not difficult, but it does require a different way of seeing. Walk into your kitchen, look up, Instead of ignoring the cabinet tops as dead space, see them as sky, see them as the atmosphere from which fresh inspiration, health, wealth, and opportunity are meant to pour. Ask yourself, if fortune were a mist, a soft rain of blessings, could it find its way into my home? Or would it be blocked, deflected, absorbed by the clutter that lives unseen above? To open the sky is to re-invite heaven into your home. Clear the tops of the cabinets fully, or leave only a few intentional objects. Items that breathe upward, that lift the energy rather than compress it. Light, living plants are beautiful allies here. Pothos vines spilling downward gently, peace lilies standing upright with grace, bamboo reaching for the light. Alternatively, soft and simple art, a small painting of sky, clouds, or mountain peaks, can extend the sense of upward space even where architectural limits exist. Clear crystals placed thoughtfully can scatter light and remind the energy field to stay bright, open, and moving. But the most important quality is not the objects themselves. It is the feeling they evoke. When you look up, the space above your kitchen should feel expansive, breathable, inviting. It should feel like an inhalation of fresh air, not a bracing against pressure. Lightness is the key. Openness is the invitation. And in Feng Shui, as in life, what you invite invites you back. There is a magic in creating a visual sky inside your home. It speaks to the deep, often forgotten part of ourselves that craves possibility, that thrives under open horizons, that feels safest not under walls of stuff, but under vistas of space. We are creatures of earth, yes, but also of sky. Our spirit grows not just by what we build below, but by what we leave open above. In practical terms, once you have cleared the cabinet tops, maintain them with mindfulness. Resist the urge to let them become out of sight, out of mind, dumping grounds again. Treat them as sacred space. Dust them with care. Bless them with light. Let the very absence of clutter there become a form of prayer, a silent but potent signal to the universe that says, here in this home we have made space for grace. Here we are ready to receive. Over time, the shifts will be subtle but real. Ideas will come more easily. Financial openings will feel less strained, less fought for. Relationships will find more air to breathe. The whole atmosphere of the home will feel less compressed, more lifted, more aligned with the upward current of growth that is the true nature of life. Because in Feng Shui, the lesson is clear. What presses down must eventually be lifted. What suffocates must eventually be released. And when you open the sky above your life, you open the sky within it as well. Principle 6, hide sharpness, the knife story. In Feng Shui, the kitchen is often referred to as the heart of abundance, a place where nourishment is crafted not only for the body, but also for the spirit of a home. Yet in the very center of this nurturing space, many households unknowingly invite tension, conflict, and subtle emotional friction through the careless exposure of sharp objects, especially knives. In traditional Feng Shui and across numerous ancient cultures, the blade is not seen as a neutral tool. It is a carrier of decisive energy, cutting, dividing, severing. When knives are left openly displayed on countertops, mounted on magnetic strips, or stuck proudly in visible blocks, they do more than decorate a space. They broadcast an ongoing energetic message of readiness for conflict, of latent aggression, of a subconscious invitation to division, rather than unity. This is not superstition. It is energetic psychology. The human nervous system, wired for survival across millennia, registers sharp objects in the periphery with a spike in alertness. Even if the mind says these knives are harmless, they're just part of the kitchen, the deeper, more primal part of the brain never fully relaxes in their presence. It remains subtly on guard. It remains ready to react. And when a household lives with this silent, invisible tension humming constantly in the background, it shapes behaviors, relationships, moods, often in ways too subtle to recognize at first. I once worked with a newlywed couple who had been happily living together for years, but upon marrying and moving into a shared home, found themselves bickering constantly in the kitchen. Small disagreements over dinner prep spiraled into larger emotional flare-ups. They blamed stress, work schedules, adjusting to married life. But when I visited their kitchen, the energetic culprit was immediately clear. A full magnetic strip, bristling with sharp knives, displayed directly above their main prep counter. Every time they stood side by side to cook, every movement, every glance was conducted under the silent gaze of dozens of gleaming blades. Without realizing it, they were literally standing in a field of sharpened energy, an invisible forest of tension. When I explained the Feng Shui principle, that exposed blades cut through not only vegetables, but also trust, patience, and harmony, they were skeptical. How could simply hiding knives make a difference when real issues like communication and compromise were at stake? But to their credit, they agreed to try on. They removed the magnetic strip, stored the knives neatly in a closed drawer, and even wrapped seldom used ones in soft cloth for added symbolic gentleness. Within weeks, they reported a noticeable shift. Cooking together became easier. Conversations flowed without sparks. The edge, both literal and emotional, had softened. In practical terms, the advice is straightforward but crucial. Store knives, scissors, and any other cutting tools out of sight. Use drawers with gentle dividers. If counter space is necessary, use fully enclosed knife blocks that conceal the blades from direct line of sight. Even better, integrate a ritual of softening into the storage process. Place a small cloth, a slip of red paper, or a sprig of fresh herbs in the drawer, symbolically wrapping the sharpness in warmth, in life, in intention. Understand that it is not about denying the necessity of knives. They are essential tools, just as firm decisions and clear boundaries are essential aspects of life. But just as we sheath a sword, not because we deny its power, but because we respect it, we store our knives properly, not because we fear them, but because as we honor the energy they carry and the energy we wish to cultivate in our homes. When the sharpness is hidden, the kitchen returns to its true nature, a sanctuary of creation, not of combat. Meals prepared in such spaces carry less tension, more nourishment. Conversations held over stoves and sinks soften, opening to laughter, to gratitude, to collaboration rather than competition. Children feel safer, partners feel less reactive. Even guests, without knowing why, will often describe the space as more welcoming, more relaxed, more alive. Energetically, hiding sharpness invites trust back into the heart of the home. It signals to every inhabitant, consciously and unconsciously, you are safe here. You are welcomed, not challenged. You are supported, not measured against invisible blades. And in the field of such trust, abundance grows not as a guarded prize, but as a natural flowering of life itself. So tonight, after you finish watching this video, walk into your kitchen and look not just at what you use, but at what you reveal. Ask yourself, is my kitchen a place where energy flows, or where it is sliced into restless fragments? Take 5 minutes, move the knives, close the sharpness away, cover the edge of tension with the fabric of kindness. And then stand for a moment in the new stillness you have created, knowing that in this simple, almost invisible act, you have invited not only better meals, but a better life. Principle 7, the table must breathe, connection and abundance. In the subtle but profound landscape of Feng Shui, the dining table is far more than a mere piece of furniture. It is the altar of daily life, the hearthstone where nourishment, conversation, connection, and prosperity converge. It is where families gather to exchange not just food, but energy, intentions, and dream. In traditional homes, the dining table is honored as a symbol of abundance, not simply because it holds meals, but because it holds space for gathering, for giving and receiving, for sharing and expanding fortune in every sense of the word. Yet too often, especially in modern layouts where space is compressed or undervalued, this sacred piece is treated as an afterthought. The table is shoved into a corner, pushed flush against a wall, treated as little more than a functional surface to eat upon and then abandon. Energetically, this act carries consequences deeper than most realize. When a dining table is pressed into a wall, the qi, the life force, cannot fully circulate around it. One side becomes compressed, closed off, unable to breathe. Symbolically, this constricts the family's capacity to receive external blessings and restricts the free flow of communication within the household itself. It is as if, by walling off part of the table, we unconsciously wall off part of our openness to life, to wealth, to opportunity, to joyful connection. The table becomes not a circle of sharing, but a dead end of solitary consumption. And over time, this stagnation seeps into the larger fabric of home life. Conversations grow shorter or more transactional. Meals become rushed or muted. A subtle loneliness pervades even when the house is full. In Feng Shui, circulation is life. A table that breathes allows a family to breathe with it. A table that allows easy passage around most of its edges, even if only enough space for a single person to move freely. Creates an energetic vortex that pulls people inward, invites conversation, holds space for abundance to gather and linger. It says, there is room here. Room for nourishment, room for laughter, room for celebration, room for fortune to find you and stay. The correction, once seen, is simple. Even in the smallest of spaces, make it a priority to pull the dining table slightly away from the wall. It need not float grandly in the center of a vast room. It only needs enough breathing room to suggest openness, invitation, movement. Aim for at least a person's width of clearance, about 2 feet if possible, around the majority of the table's perimeter. Where architectural constraints make full clearance impossible, prioritize the sides where people most often sit and gather. Use mirrors thoughtfully to visually expand tight corners. Use light-colored tablecloths, fresh flowers, or soft overhead lighting to encourage qi to gather and circulate joyfully. And just as importantly, honor the dining table in daily practice. Keep it clean. Keep it clear of unnecessary clutter. Avoid allowing the table to become a dumping ground for unopened mail, grocery bags, or unfinished projects. In Feng Shui, clutter stagnates qi, and nowhere is this more critical than at the table of abundance. Think of your dining table not as a passive object, but as an active participant in your home's fortune. Every meal eaten, there is an offering to your life's expansion. Every conversation shared, there is a seed planted in the soil of connection. I once worked with a young couple who had recently moved into a small city apartment. Pressed for space, they had shoved a modest 2-person table against the kitchen wall and rarely sat there together. Meals were eaten separately, standing up or lounging on the couch. Over time, they began to feel increasingly disconnected, not just from each other, but from their shared goals and dreams. Financial strain followed. When they realigned the table, pulling it just far enough from the wall to allow seating on 3 sides, and committed to sitting together even for brief, simple meals, the energetic shift was palpable. Conversations deepened. Financial opportunities opened. The home felt like it belonged to both of them again, not just as individuals surviving parallel lives, but as partners building something shared. In truth, the dining table is a mirror. How it breathes reflects how you breathe with those you love. How much space you allow around it reflects how much space you are willing to allow for connection, for abundance, for grace to find its way into your daily life. A table cramped against a wall says, there is no room. A table that breathes says, we welcome more life here. Tonight, when you walk through your home, pause at your table. See it with new eyes. Ask yourself, is this a place that invites gathering, sharing, blessing, or has it been reduced to a functional stop along a rushed day? If needed, move it, just a little. Clear it, light a candle, place a simple bowl of fruit or fresh flowers at its center. Breathe life back into it. And then, as the days pass, watch how life responds. Watch how small shifts become great rivers. Because in Feng Shui, the smallest doors often open to the widest fields. Final, if you pause for just a moment and listen, not with your ears, but with your attention, you might notice that your kitchen is already speaking. It speaks through the way objects are placed, through the openness or the crowding of the shelves, through the vitality of what you nourish yourself with, and the quiet weight of what you have allowed to grow stagnant. In Feng Shui, nothing is random. Fortune does not appear by accident, nor does misfortune descend without cause. Wealth, vitality, opportunity, They all respond to the subtle invitations we extend every single day, often without even realizing it. The kitchen, more than any other space, is where these invitations are crafted or neglected. It is where energy is either stirred to life or allowed to thicken into inertia. But you do not need to overhaul your life overnight. You do not need to fear what has been misplaced or mourn for what has been overlooked. Energy is always ready to move. Life is always ready to meet you halfway. All it takes is one shift, one bowl turned upright, one drawer cleared of broken tools, one table pulled slightly away from the wall so that air and chi and laughter can flow again. One act of noticing, one act of respect for the invisible forces that shape the visible parts of our lives. Tonight, I invite you to choose just one thing, one small but real gesture of welcome to fortune. It might be clearing the top of your cabinets. It might be replacing an expired bottle of oil. It might be finally moving that stack of clutter from your dining table and laying down a simple cloth and a bowl of fresh fruit. It doesn't matter which shift you choose. What matters is that you move the energy with your own hands, your own will, your own renewed intention. Because in feng shui, as in life, change begins quietly, like a ripple in still water, and grows stronger, wider, deeper with every act of alignment. If something in this journey spoke to you, if a part of you feels ready to listen more closely to the spaces you live within, I invite you to share your reflection in the comments. Tell me, which one shift will you begin with today? I would love to hear. And if this video has given you even a small spark of clarity or inspiration, I warmly invite you to like this video, share it with someone else who is building their own path, and subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. Your support helps us inch closer to our first 1,000 followers. And every single gesture of encouragement helps us bring grounded, accessible feng shui wisdom to more homes, more hearts, more lives. The kitchen is already speaking. The home is already listening. The only question now is, what new story will you begin telling it?